Well, vaping was initially marketed as a way to quit smoking. Now it's being blamed for producing a new generation of nicotine dependency, especially among young Australians. According to the Cancer Council, at least a third of Australian teenagers have tried vaping before. Some principals say it's causing students to act out and become distracted at school. But there are concerns the federal government's prescription model is feeding a thriving black market for vapes. So what can we do better? Joining me now is Action for Smokefree 2025 Director Ben Youdan, and he joins me here at the desk. Good to see you. What are we getting wrong here?
Well, what we do know is vaping is substantially less harmful than smoking. And I think what's been...
Do we know that? Or...
We do know that.
Yeah.
So there's been significant reviews of global evidence. And people smoke for the nicotine, but it's the smoke and the tar and the stuff that comes from smoking combusted plant materials that causes almost all the death and disease as a result of smoking. And in New Zealand, where I'm from, we've seen that hundreds of thousands of people have switched to vaping from smoking, to the point where we've actually seen the smoking rates almost half in 5 years, largely because people are switching, because in New Zealand compared to Australia, we have a regulated model whereby people can buy vapes in specialist shops and even to a degree wherever you can buy cigarettes.
Yeah, don't we have to be a bit careful about telling people that vaping is safer? Because when we talk about some of the prescription vapes, yes, the ones that you get from the chemist, but there's a lot we don't know about these, flavoured black market vapes that are made overseas and being sold on the black market.
Yeah, and I think that's a definite reflection on where there's issues with the Australian model, the prescription model. So essentially, what it's done is two things. Firstly, it's put vapes, which are safer and less harmful than cigarettes, into a model which is highly medicalised and makes them hard to get, but left cigarettes, which kill 2 out of 3 users, available absolutely everywhere. The consequence of that has also been that people who are trying to quit using vapes and young people who are curious about them are accessing from the black market. So unlike New Zealand, where we have a regulated model, we don't have any idea really what the provenance is of the products that are coming into Australia and getting into the hands of people. So whilst they're probably still less dangerous than cigarettes, there's actually no ability to, for example, say, well, the nicotine should be capped at this level, or you shouldn't be selling these flavours because we know that the chemical is more harmful than another chemical, or they shouldn't be named this way. So I think Australia is currently in a situation where I think you're in a bit of a lose-lose situation with your policies. And so I've been here talking about our experience in New Zealand, where we've seen huge declines in smoking. We have seen young people vaping, probably at similar levels to Australia, but I think the big difference is that we also have the regulations and the ability to crack down on how young people are getting vapes because we have a transparent market.
Right. So are you still, in New Zealand, are you still selling the same brands of flavoured vapes that we see being sold on the black market here? You just regulate them and what, tax them?
Well, it's not necessarily the same brands, and I'm sure some of the products that are getting into young people's hands are the same ones that get sold in New Zealand, because they'll be coming into the country in all sorts of different ways. However, what we have the ability to do, and even next month we have new regulations that are coming in to change the nicotine levels in vapes, or to change how they're being described, so that a flavour must be called strawberry, not called strawberry shortcake and pink pony or whatever it's called. But
is that really going to make a difference, though?
I think it also does make a difference. So until 2020, we didn't have any regulations on vapes, and that's when we saw our big rise in youth vaping. Since we've had regulations in place, we've actually started to see a significant year-on-year decline in the number of young people who are vaping regularly. And I think in part because we've got better controls.
Well, if you have the ability to call something strawberry rather than, strawberry shortcake or whatever it is, why wouldn't you just go the whole hog and go plain packaging on all of the vapes?
Well, I think if you have a regulated model, there's certainly a case that you would want to have fairly banal descriptors of the flavours and plain packaging. And I think in a regulated model, you can do that. And in a regulated model where the products are allowed to be sold and the market's not dominated by the black market, there's the ability to adapt as evidence comes and change how products are sold or how they're marketed. But at the moment, there is no control over that.
So when you discuss this with interested parties in Canberra, were you talking with the Health Minister in particular?
So we talked with a range of representatives from across the political spectrum, all of whom had very good questions, were very interested in the experiences in New Zealand and could see where there were flaws around the prescription model, in particular because basically the outcome has been that our smoking rates were about the same 5 years ago. Ours are down to 8% now. Australia's still at 12%. And the cost of that gap is people dying from smoking. And I think that's a real indicator that putting barriers up to safer products has got very, very dire consequences, particularly for the most vulnerable populations who are still smoking.
Yeah, it sure does. And it seems that authorities are well behind the 8 ball on this one. And there's been an explosion of vaping. Ben, really appreciate your time today and your insights on all of this.
You're
See
welcome.
you soon.